Hello, my name is Scott Dresden, and I'm the work group lead for the Gear 2.0 Advancing Dementia Care Emergency Department Practices work group. And I'm here today to present our research priorities. The goal of the Emergency Department Care Practices work group was to develop key questions and identify research gaps in optimal care for persons living with dementia who are seeking acute unscheduled care in the emergency department or through alternative means such as telehealth or community paramedicine. We felt it was important to include alternative means of acute unscheduled care because sometimes the emergency department might not be the best place to care for a person living with dementia. For some background, we know that approximately 25% of older adults in the emergency department have some form of cognitive impairment, which may include dementia. But emergency department care is focused on acute medical care, not necessarily dementia care. And so when the emergency department looks like this picture on the screen, the stimuli and care in the emergency department might impair patients' ability to cope and lead to poor outcomes in the emergency department and beyond. So our work group set out to answer the following questions through scoping review. What components of emergency department care improve patient-centered outcomes for persons with dementia? And our second question was, how do emergency care needs for persons with dementia differ from other patients in the emergency department? Through our scoping review, presenting the results of our scoping review to the consensus conference, presenting draft research priorities, and voting on those research priorities, we've come up with the following list of research priorities for emergency department care practices for persons living with dementia. The first is, how can we best evaluate in a patient-centric and care partner-centric manner the emergency department interventions for persons living with dementia? We felt it was very important to include the patient-centric and care partner-centric manner in this question, because throughout the discussion with patients, patient advocates, and care partners, it became clear to us that the patients and care partners felt that their needs were often put on a back burner, and a new finding was perhaps brought forward that they weren't even necessarily concerned about. And so they felt that they needed more of a say in what was happening to them while in the emergency department. Our second question is, which environmental, operational, personnel, system, or policy changes best improve emergency department care for persons living with dementia? This question illustrates the wide variety of different interventions which can be implemented in emergency departments to improve care for persons living with dementia. And it's important to be able to evaluate those interventions as well as in the last question on how those impact patients and care partners. Our third question is, how can gaps in training and dementia care competencies among clinical and non-clinical staff be addressed in ways that achieve sustainable improvements in care delivery for persons living with dementia? Again, our patients and care partner advocates in the consensus conference talked about how one person may be very well versed in dementia care while another person in the emergency department may not. And so how can these gaps in training be identified, and how can we fill those gaps to create sustainable improvements in care delivery? Our fourth question is, how do various community and identity-based factors, including cognitive impairment and social determinants of health, impact delivery and receipt of emergency department care for persons living with dementia? Throughout our scoping review, it was very clear that different identity-based factors such as race and ethnicity were very infrequently considered in interventions and even not recorded in many research projects. So we think this is a very important thing to be aware of and be sure that we are reporting how different interventions may impact different populations. Finally, our fifth research question is, what economic or other implementation science measures address viability of optimal emergency department care practices for persons living with dementia? We felt that this was important to include because many times you'll have an intervention which is done for a research project or at an academic center, which may not be well translated to other centers or even sustained at the center it was implemented at. So we think it's important to try to think about the economics of emergency department care for persons living with dementia, as well as other implementation science measures to create sustainability in these processes. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope to look forward to reviewing and reading proposals on how to improve emergency department care practices for persons living with dementia, and hope that you keep these research priorities in mind. Thank you very much.